Alle må følge skilting til nærmeste nødutgang og gå rolig ut i samlingsplassen ved Grieghallen. Takk for oppmerksomheten.
Welcome to school salen.
Dear Dr. Anne Larigauderie, dear guests and colleagues, welcome. Tomorrow we will confer an honorary doctorate to Dr. Anne Larigauderie. She is to become the honorary, she's chosen by the rectorate, and tomorrow we will celebrate her together with 8 new honorary doctors from all over the university, chosen by the 8 different faculties of our university. And I'm so much looking forward to this. The central role of the university is to create new knowledge through our research. And the title of our strategy is Knowledge That Shapes Society. We believe that the dynamic and ever-changing scientific knowledge must be an integrated part of our societies and of our democratic choices. As scientific communities, we are eager, we're striving for more knowledge to fill the knowledge gaps, but it is possible, but I think it also should be possible for a rector at a research university to say this. Sometimes we are too focused only on filling knowledge gaps. The society around us needs to know what we already know. We also need to communicate, to spread and to systemize our knowledge across institutions, across sectors, across nations, across disciplines. And this is perhaps truer than ever. We live in a time of many challenges. Challenges we face are not just many, they are increasingly complex. And climate and biodiversity are intertwined, and so are their solutions. Biodiversity and nature underpin almost every aspect of human development, and the threats towards them are both significant and complex. To address these challenges in a democratic society, we need research-informed policy-making at all levels. Our new honorary doctor-to-be, Dr. Anne Larigauderie, is the executive secretary of the Intergovernmental Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Systems, also known as IPBES. She has previously been the head of science in society. She has previously been the head of science in society at the International Council for Science and executive director of Diversitas. Her research has concern with how climate change affects plant physiology and ecology in various contexts. We, in the university leadership, nominated her for the honorary doctorate, among other achievements, for her central role in building up and facilitating the IPBES. IPBES was established precisely to strengthen the science policy interface for biodiversity and ecosystem services for the conservation and sustainable use of biodiversity, long-term human well-being and sustainable development. The panel involves thousands of leading researchers across the globe from all scientific disciplines and knowledge communities that come together to provide policy-relevant knowledge at all levels, in government, in private sector, and civil society. This kind of work is paramount if we are to meet and solve the complex and, in some cases, existential challenges facing our societies. It is therefore with great pleasure that I welcome you all to this lecture by our honorary Dr. Anne Larigauderie. Dr. Anne, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And so, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, dear friends, I have many friends here in the room. I'm really very happy and very proud to be giving this lecture here on the occasion of the reception of the honorary degree from the University of Bergen. I feel really deeply honored. I feel privileged, and I really want to thank you again, Rector Margaret Hagen, for this important recognition. And as just mentioned, I have spent about the last, let's say, 15 years of my career or so building IPBES, building a science policy interface for biodiversity. First in the consultation phase that led to IPBES in my previous job, and since IPBES started as the executive secretary of IPBES. But the first thing that I would really like to mention is that even though I have been involved in much of what I'm going to present, it really is the effort of the entire group, the entire community. It has been a collective journey, and I want to emphasize that. One of the things that I'm really the most proud of in having built IPBES is to have built literally a community, a solid community around the science and policy interface of biodiversity, just like we had for climate change. And now we also have this for biodiversity. And I'm also very happy that in doing this, we've given more weight to biodiversity science, and we have also produced a mechanism, IPBES, which provides a way for this science to be of use, to inform decision-making, and hopefully that's the idea, with better outcomes for biodiversity. So I would like to illustrate in the talk that I'm going to give today what IPBES is about, a little bit of a history, how it works, what it has achieved, and also touch upon some of its impacts. But before I go further, and in front of this background here, I wanted, since it's the honorary degree, it's a little bit about myself. So I just wanted to say that what has given me a lot of energy and courage in all of this work here is my love for the outdoor, and my curiosity and admiration for nature, which I'm sure I share with many people here in the room. So let's now dive into a journey through IPBES, starting with a little bit of a history. So we are back in 1992. And that year, there was a very important meeting for our community, the Rio Earth Summit, which saw, among others, the establishment of two conventions, the Climate Change Convention and the Biodiversity Convention. And the point I'd like to make here is that you can see that from the start, the Climate Change Convention was able to benefit from the reports of the IPCC, which had preceded the establishment of that climate change convention. Therefore, the Climate Change Convention has been informed from the very beginning by the work of this Science Policy Interface for Climate, IPCC, which, as you know, has been releasing reports over the years on the state of knowledge regarding climate. Now, for biodiversity, we are always a little bit slower than climate, but catching up quickly. It took another 20 years before the biodiversity community was able to benefit from that same mechanism, and that took place in 2012 with the establishment of IPBES. So how did that come to be? Well, in 2005, two important developments took place. The first one was the release of the Millennium Ecosystem Assessment. I don't know if some of you still have these big black books on your shelves. It was a very successful report. It was the first time, really, that the field of the environment, biodiversity, was reviewed at such depth in a global level, involving an international scientific community. So it was quite impactful, and at that time, people realized that it was a one-time off event and that there was no mechanism to repeat this, just like IPCC was doing. And then in parallel to this, there was an important conference that took place in Paris called Biodiversity, Science and Governance. And at that meeting, the president of France at the time, Chirac, stated that it is time to create an IPCC for biodiversity, and that then launched a consultation which took several years, which in the end led to governments establishing IPBES. And on the right hand side here, you see us. At the time, I was a part of the scientific community. I was directing an international program called Diversitas at the time. It has now merged into Future Earth, for those of you who are familiar with it. And what we did at the time was to really propose ideas on this new idea of an IPBES, what it should do, how it should be built. So this was a time for really brainstorming on what the community wanted in terms of a science policy interface. And so in 2012, 94 countries at the time got together in Panama and agreed to establish an intergovernmental body for biodiversity. I have put here that we now have 146 governments as members, so you see that our membership has increased by about 50% since IPBES was established in 2012. And of course, we aim at universal membership, have all of the 193, I believe it is, members of the United Nations as member of IPBES, since just like IPCC, IPBES is intergovernmental, and so therefore this means that the members are the government. So you see the mission here of IPBES to strengthen knowledge foundations for better policy through science, for the conservation and sustainable use of biodiversity, long-term human well-being and sustainable development. That is the mission of IPBES, emphasis on better policy through science. And there was an international competition for the secretariat, and in the end, Germany won, like in football. And so now we are based at the big building, which you see here, in Bonn, next to the Rhine River, in fact, together with many other environment-related secretariats, such as the Secretariat for the Climate Change Convention, to just name the biggest one. So a few words about IPBES itself now. And so really the core business of IPBES, just like IPCC, is to to examine existing knowledge. And so IPBES produces assessment reports. Everything that it does is done in response to requests from governments, but also from non-governmental stakeholders as well. And this is knowledge related to not only biodiversity, but also the contributions it provides to people, and also importantly, options for action. And the work of IPBES is guiding by a number of principles. I will not read them all, but those are really the DNA of IPBES, if you will. And so, for example, IPBES has been forging new paths in terms of working with different knowledge systems, and we have an approach to working with indigenous and local knowledge, for example. I'll say a little bit more about that. We are also committed to working with all countries. We have a capacity building program. We're committed to gender equity, among others. And so we've tried to translate that into action in everything that we do. So IPBES produces assessment reports. And so what is that? What does that mean? It's important to realize that an assessment is more than just a compilation of the literature, if you will, more than a synthesis. It is actually a critical analysis of existing knowledge. And in producing these reports, IPBES follows a very strict series of steps where there are times where drafts are circulated for peer review or review by governments. And that's very important to increase not only the scientific quality through the peer review, but also the policy relevance, because in the early stages, if you will, governments can provide comments and say, you know, we think that this is too, I don't know, esoteric or too abstract, and we need knowledge that is going to be much more useful to us, or, you know, they can rectify, they can provide their views early on in the drafts. And so an assessment is for sure always quite a large piece of a body of knowledge. It includes a number of chapters, and then there is the very important summary for policymakers, which itself contains key messages. And these key messages, through this critical analysis of the literature, are accompanied by terms regarding the degree of confidence. And so you see here on the right-hand side, if a statement is made which is based on a lot of evidence on which there is much agreement, then we will, in parentheses, say that this statement is well established. And at the other end of the spectrum, we will have inconclusive. Usually we try to not put inconclusive statements in the summary for policy makers. Now, I will not go through all of the steps of how an assessment is prepared, just to mention that the scoping, which is a chapter outline, is approved by government, and then it goes to the scientists. They have their roadmap. They have usually 3 years, a budget, and they go and meet and produce their report. Then you have the rounds of peer reviews, and at the end, governments come back, and they are invited to approve line by line the summary for policymakers, and that's the final plenary for that report. There is usually quite a bit of drama and interesting developments and unexpected statements and all of that. But at the end, the document is approved following this dialogue with the authors of the report, who have to explain the scientific substantiation of each one of the statements in response to questions from governments, because after that, governments are going to approve it, and then it becomes their document. So it then has the standing, if you will, of a government, intergovernmental document. And so they want to make sure that what they are approving is based on solid scientific grounds, hence this procedure here. Just saying quickly that in each time an assessment is produced, IPBES also at the same time implements its approach to working with indigenous and local knowledge. So there is a whole procedure for that, which consists, among others, in having a series of dialogues with indigenous and indigenous people and local communities, where people are invited to help define the questions at the beginning, to contribute material, to review as well. And then in the end, there is also a give-back process where authors go back to the communities which have provided feedback or material and have a dialogue on the findings of the assessment. And it's an approach which is now being discussed with IPCC and also with the Climate Change Convention, which has not until now been paying as much attention as they perhaps should have regarding indigenous people and climate change. I also mention that IPBES does a lot of work on capacity building, especially with involving early career scientists to build the next generation of IPBES experts. And so each time we have an assessment, we take with us 2 young scientists for each one of our chapters. They are in a mentorship program with one of the authors of the assessment. They are going to have their own training. They have meetings among each other. And, but they are authors in their own right and are part of the authorship. And I say this also because the office which oversees all of the work related to capacity building is supported by Norway. It's not too far from here in Trondheim at the Norwegian Environmental Agency. In fact, they have an IPBES meeting this week where I should be, but it's better here. So, and then the last element about IPBES itself is the conceptual framework. And so that was the first product that the plenary of IPBES approved way back when in 2013. And this is a set of boxes and arrows which describe the object of study for the IPBES community. It describes how they see the interactions between people and nature, and it has proven to be extremely useful in everything that IPBES does. So you see at the bottom there is a box called nature, and here we are going to look at status and trends in nature. We're also going to look at how changes in nature impact on the left-hand side the contributions that people derive from nature, and then on top, how in turn this affects the quality of life of people. And then in the center, you have the causes of the changes observed in nature, the indirect causes, such as institutions and governance, and the direct causes on the right-hand side. And I'll come back to that in a second. But what's important with this framework is 2 things, really. One is that it promotes an integrated approach to biodiversity science and to the work of IPBES. And so, in other words, if IPBES, like it did, the first report of IPBES was on pollination, pollinators, and food security. And so a report on pollinators could only be on status and trends in pollinators, let's say. But if we did only that, it would only be the box called nature. But because of this framework, IPBES also has to look at how changes or loss in pollinators impacts pollination, which is the nature's contributions to people, how that affects peoples and their quality of life, and then it also has to look at the causes for the loss of pollinators and options for action. So that is the integrated approach which is promoted by the framework. And the second important dimension also is that it allows different knowledge systems to coexist. And so in this framework, you have the blue text, which relates to other knowledge systems, including indigenous knowledge, and then the green letters, which refer to the language of science. And both of them coexist and work together under the IPBES roof. So, what has IPBES achieved? And as I said, the biodiversity community got a late start, but we are catching up very quickly. The community has been very busy. It's probably exhausted because of IPBES. Since, as you can see, IPBES has produced in just over 10 years of existence 11 reports, and which together have involved close to 3,000 experts. I will not cite them all, but just to mention that some of these reports have focused on particular themes, so that the first one in 2016 was on pollinators, pollination and food security, and the last released in 2023 was on invasive alien species, so 2 themes. There have also been methodological reports, so one on scenarios and models in 2016, for example, and one on values in 2022. We have had regional reports, 4 regions together covering the entire globe in 2018, and we have so far had one global assessment, the landmark global assessment of biodiversity and ecosystem services, which came to be in 2019 here. So IPBES has had 4 chairs so far. The current chair, David Obura, is a coral reef scientist based in Kenya, and as you can see, we take rotation among regions seriously, and since so far the 4 chairs have come from 4 different regions. So I will give you a flavor of some of the key findings of a few of the reports. Of course, it will not be exhaustive, but it will be mostly drawn from the IPBES global assessment, noting that IPBES is now just getting started for the production of a second global assessment, which would come close to 2030 to assess progress against the current framework. So we are not there yet, but those things take time, and so we are just starting now to get organized, and we've received the mandate from governments to do so. So the IPBES global assessment was quite an adventure. It took 3 years, 500 scientists together. They analyzed 15,000 references as well as indigenous knowledge. They received many thousands of comments through the peer review process, and you see the 3 courageous co-chairs there who oversaw this important piece of work. So I'll really give now 8 quick outcomes with a particular focus on options for action, which came from the global assessment. So the first overall conclusion was that nature is deteriorating at a rate and scale which is unprecedented in human history, and entirely due to human activities. There were many numbers that were given. I will not cite them all. We mentioned this morning at the breakfast meeting the fact that we've lost 85% of our freshwater ecosystems. 3/4 of the land area has been significantly modified by humans. And this number of 1 million of plants and animal species threatened with extinction out of a total of 8.1 million is something that somehow became associated with the global assessment. It's really struck the consciences of people around the world, and in a way, in many places, put the issue of biodiversity on the map, with a new reaching out to new communities. I'll come back to that in a second. Secondly, the conclusion was that the deterioration of ecosystem, the loss of species, of genetic, etc., is affecting the capacity of ecosystems to provide a number of contributions, which IPBES has classified as 18 categories under 3 types. So here we show the first type, which is the regulating contributions. And here the conclusion was that over the past 50 years, all of the 10 regulating contributions have declined. That's the capacity of ecosystems to pollinate crops, or to regulate the quality of our air, to mitigate against climate change, to mitigate also against pandemics, the emergence of new diseases, etc. All of these contributions have been declining. The second category is the non-material contributions, the capacity of nature to provide inspiration, a sense of identity, but also learning, physical experience, maintenance of options, very important. All of these have also been declining, and the only contributions which have been increasing are the material contributions, the food, the fiber, construction materials, etc. So in other words, people have been producing food, have been extracting material at the expense of all of the other contributions that nature provides. So then there is a big part of this report which is about what to do, about the causes. And one of the conclusions was that it is important to address the causes of the loss of biodiversity. And the assessment actually ranked the direct causes and concluded that the first cause on land for the loss of biodiversity is land use change, and by that we mean deforestation, for example, or urban sprawl, everything which destroys natural habitats. The second direct cause, which is the first at sea, is the overexploitation of organisms such as overfishing. The third cause is climate change, and climate change is increasing in importance and is soon to become the first cause of the loss of biodiversity. Fourth is pollution in its many forms, plastic pollution, fertilizers, pesticides, etc. And the fifth one is invasive alien species. In order to address the direct drivers, one needs to look at the underlying causes, the underlying drivers, and that here has to do with people themselves, the decisions they make, the institutions they build, the economy they built, all of their social, cultural characteristics. And that, of course, then goes into looking into values and into behaviors. So, which actions to take in order to put us back on track, so to speak? Well, the first thing, the first conclusion, of course, is to protect what is left. And in other words, to expand and effectively manage protected areas on land and at sea. And this is why the decision as part of the new global biodiversity framework to protect 30% of land and sea is so important. We also know that it's very complex and that there are many, many sub-questions to answer. It needs in particular to be done well, and for that, the areas that are protected need to be ecologically representative. The network of protected areas needs to be effectively managed. They need to be properly resourced, particularly in developing countries where there is often not enough resources to implement regulation. And also they need to be well connected among each other to take into account the fact that those species that will migrate as a result of climate change. So the network issue is very important. But of course, we're not going to preserve all of biodiversity with just the protected areas, even if it is 30%, and even if it is well done, which is a tall order. And so this implies, therefore, that we also need to take better care of the 70% remaining of the planet. And in order to do this, we need to look at all of our activities in all of our sectors through a biodiversity lens. So we need to really place biodiversity at the center of pretty much everything we do, from agriculture, economy, health, transportation, energy, etc. I'll just give two examples on that. Agriculture, because it is so important. Agriculture is really, of course, key for people, but it is also the main source for the destruction of biodiversity. Of course, it competes with natural habitats by definition, and it is also a source of pollution. But it could be done better, and in being done better, it could go a long way into really having better outcomes for biodiversity and less impact on the environment. Transforming agriculture is a hot topic in many countries, especially now in Europe in the context of the election. I do not know in Norway, but in Germany certainly, France as well. And so all of these actions that are here, we know how to do that, but then it's a question of accompanying it better and having more political will in many situations to make a reality. So agroecology, less pesticides, fertilizers, protection of pollinators, reducing harmful subsidies, eating less meat, less fish, more vegetable protein, and reducing food waste. All of those are really key. And if all of that would be done, then the world would be certainly a much, much, much better place. And the same is holding for fisheries and ocean. Also here, rebuilding overfish stocks, eliminating illegal fishing, the subsidies also, and also the reduction of fertilizers, because in the end, they pollute rivers, but also the oceans in the end as well. And just a word to close on the global assessment here. The economic and financial systems also need to be revised, reformed, adjusted to the needs of biodiversity. The subsidies, again, explore alternative methods of economic accounting. They exist. They need to be used more. Improving market-based instruments, all of these certifications, biodiversity offsettings, all of these tools are starting to come. And in fact, IPBES has a report which is analyzing those currently, and creating and improving supply chain models that reduce the impact on nature. That also is something that is currently being increasingly done by businesses around the world. So I will now switch gear a little bit. I will continue to share some highlights of some of the work of IPBES. During the pandemic, IPBES was very active and produced 2 workshop reports, one on climate change and one on pandemics. Workshop reports are different tools. It's a lighter product, if you will, where the outcome, the summary for policymakers, is not approved by government. So it is only a workshop report. It doesn't have the standing of a government document when it is done. I'll just say just a few words on these 2 reports. The report on biodiversity and pandemic was important because it really focused the attention of people on the fact that before being diseases, microbes are found in nature, and that there is an ecological component to pandemics, in addition to the medical component, which is quite often the focus of the attention. And so the report talks about how pandemics emerge from microbes found in nature, mostly on animals. Then it explains the literature that looks at how the microbes spill over from the infected animals into humans, what drives this, which is quite often very large-scale human projects, such as deforestation, for example. And it also talks about the fact that it could happen again and again, that there are many viruses, mostly undiscovered yet, with quite a large proportion able to infect humans. And so the conclusion there was that, in addition, of course, to bringing a medical solution, which remains obviously very important, it is also key to understand how diseases emerge from their environment, to act on the drivers here as well, which IPBES identified as being deforestation at large scale and also wildlife trade. It's important to detect hotspots of emergence and also to build bridges between various communities, as often in biodiversity science, between communities which have not worked together before. And in this particular case, it was the medical community, the veterinarian community for the sick animals, working together with people who are working on ecology, forestry, conservation community. That's what's referred to as the One Health approach. There would be many more things to say, but I'm just trying to give you a flavor of some of the important topics that IPBES has been tackling over the years. Just one slide only on biodiversity and climate change, even though it is so incredibly important. And this is also a workshop report. It's a bit historic because it was the first collaboration that IPBES has had with IPCC, our counterparts and our models. And This report, I just checked yesterday, has been downloaded 50,000 times, so it's been really very successful and useful, even though it was not a full-blown assessment, but just the beginning, just a workshop report. And of course, it was very rich, and I cannot do justice to the richness of the conclusion. There was a lot of information reviewing the impact of climate change on biodiversity, number one. Number two, there was an emphasis on the fact that natural ecosystems can provide a lot of solutions to climate change. This is the nature-based solution, and that therefore it makes sense not only from a biodiversity point of view, but also from a climate change perspective, to take care of nature, to protect nature, to restore, to sustainably manage, because it's going to increase the capacity of ecosystems to draw carbon from the atmosphere. And however, the report also focused the attention on something that is sometimes a bit ignored, which is the fact that there are some climate change mitigation measures which can have and are having negative impacts on biodiversity, such as the large-scale transformation of natural ecosystems into bioenergy crops. So here, clearly, a competition between nature and climate, in this case, bioenergy to avoid using fossil fuels at large scale, of course, and also the large-scale planting of trees to sequester carbon from the atmosphere. That's the same. Now that there is money to be made here, you see, for example, situations where indigenous people have been taken off their land in order to plant trees to sequester carbon, and it leads to many other problems. And so people need to pay much more attention, and therefore there needs to be much more of a nature focus within the work on climate change and the work of the Climate Change Convention itself. So that's a huge area, very quickly summarized here. Okay. I finish this little review of findings with a few words on values and valuation, because this is also something that has been a little bit in the DNA of IPBES. It was mentioned this morning in our little breakfast meeting here, and there are even people in the room here who said that they are using the IPBES values assessment very much, which made me very happy, of course. And so this was a methodological assessment which looked at values, and what the report did was to do a review around the world of how people conceptualize how they see the relationship between people and nature. And it found that, in fact, people value natures in many different ways, depending on context, cultures, traditions, contexts, etc. And the report introduced a new typology for categorizing the different values of nature. It talked about living from nature, with nature, in nature, and as nature, and they all correspond to different ways to interact with nature, emphasizing with from nature the capacity of nature to provide resources, which is often the one that is the focus, the most spoken about and taken into account. But the living with nature, the focus here is on the life of non-humans, if you will, with whom we are sharing nature. The living in nature values the importance of nature as the setting for people's sense of place and identity, and living as nature is about seeing the world as a physical, mental, and spiritual part of oneself. And what the report concluded was that many of these values are often ignored in favor of short-term profits and economic growth, and that ignoring these values and ignoring also the opinions and the input of local stakeholders can lead to conflict, but also to decisions about the environment which are not sustainable. And therefore, one of the major conclusions was that achieving sustainable and just futures require reforming institutions, both informal and formal institutions, to recognize and integrate these diverse values of nature into political and economic decisions. And the report also talks a lot about designing robust valuation processes to do so. So that was the values assessment. I could have spoken for many more hours about the findings of IPBES. I will not do that. I just would like to give you now a bit of a flavor on the reach and impact of IPBES to come to a close. And so the global assessment that came out in 2019 was the most successful environmental report ever. In fact, in terms of media reach, it did better than any of the IPCC reports, so we were quite encouraged and proud of ourselves. We were recently surpassed by IPCC. We are not competing with IPCC, because the report from Working Group 1, the last one, did a little bit better than the IPBES global assessment. Nevertheless, that really gives you a sense of how successful the meeting, the report was in terms of media outreach around the world. And I show some tweets. At the time, we were talking still about tweets, just to say that the report really touched some new individuals or new communities who, until then, had in many instances been talking about environmental issues, but only through the lens of climate change. And so for them, biodiversity for the first time really became an issue. They became aware of the fact that there was a crisis in biodiversity and in nature. So on top, you see the Pope here, who tweeted about IPBES. We were quite excited about that. And then Greta Thunberg also, and individuals like actors, etc. Those are just some highlights. And some have been, after that, continuing to follow biodiversity and to follow IPBES. But that also led the work of IPBES to reach out to new communities, like the youth, demonstrating now not only about climate change, but about Extinction Rebellion, or business and biodiversity, also starting to embrace even more biodiversity, following all of the work that they've been doing for climate change. And this is also the coverage, which was a very good coverage. Of course, not as good as the global assessment, but I don't know if we'll ever do as well. But the invasive alien species report, and I have no time to talk about it, but was also super successful. That is the last report that IPBES published last August, September. I'm showing here a few examples of impact. So it's not, and we are not well equipped at IPBES to really measure and follow impact. It's super difficult to know exactly what lead someone to take an action or to make a decision, because sometimes they don't tell you that in the morning they read, you know, a paragraph about IPBES and that led them. Sometimes they may not even be aware, so it's really difficult to track that. And so we are building a database. It's just an initiative that we have at the Secretariat, where we have been over the years, and now we already have 500 such cases of success stories of use of IPBES report that we are aware of and that are documented. In other words, a new piece of national legislation which explicitly cites the work of IPBES as having been the cause or the initiator of such action, or having informed the action. So it's already quite a large database, which some people are starting to do a little bit of work on, like students analyze it. I will not go through this list, but I'll just mention a couple. The first one, the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. The preamble of the framework says that the framework was designed to respond to the IPBES global assessment of biodiversity and ecosystem services. That's quite a statement. We are quite proud of that. And then it goes on to cite some of the key findings of the global assessment and on why the framework was designed, following also the structure of IPBES and the conceptual framework. G20, G7, I just say a little bit about Davos, the World Economic Forum, because that's also quite an interesting development following the release of the IPBES global assessment in 2019. The following January 2020, that's when Davos meet, the World Economic Forum in January, came up for the first time with their global risks report, and for the first time they cited the loss of biodiversity as a major risk to business, and they've been doing that ever since, and also citing the work of IPBES and the work of the global assessment, and that has really been influential and in bringing in a lot of businesses to the issue of biodiversity, and now it's a new area, business and biodiversity, where there are lots of new tools and initiatives, etc. I think I will just ignore this for now. I will come to this, which is my last slide, which is another perhaps interesting development that I wanted to share with you, is the fact that in addition to, since we're talking about achievements, about building IPBES, etc., so we've built this science policy mechanism, we've produced these reports, we've come up with these key findings, etc. But something that has also been a source of, I guess, a bit of pride, satisfaction, is the fact that IPBES has facilitated the development of a biodiversity science, which is evolving, which is now much richer than it was 10 years ago, because of all of the complex questions that are asked, that we have to address in all of our reports. We need to bring in a really huge diversity of profiles and of teams that are interdisciplinary, that come from all kinds of subdisciplines. When I started in this business some years ago, when we talked about biodiversity, it was really botany, zoology, a little bit of microbiology. Then the ecosystem people came, then economists, so we were saying social scientists, but it was really mostly economists for the longest time. And now there are all kinds of interesting profiles in social sciences, political sciences, anthropology, psychology, etc., that are part of the IPBES interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary teams, because their skills are necessary. In fact, you've seen the key questions that we now need to address is not to measure biodiversity, but to measure ourselves. You know, how do we change ourselves? What drives us to take these decisions and not those decisions? And how can we go from here to here? What is it that we need to change in our values and behaviors? And that's really where, you know, a lot of the work is needed. And I'm quite happy that we are, I mean, it's not done yet, but that it's a field, biodiversity science, which is evolving and becoming richer and more exciting every day. So I think I will stop. I hope that I haven't spoken too much. I have spoken too much, I know that for sure. Yes, so I hope that I have given you a good sense of how exciting the journey has been for IPBES, and of course, always keeping in mind that even though we reflect positively on all of the efforts and are proud of the scientific community and of its achievements, we are still not making enough of a difference as a community, and therefore that we need to do much more, that we are all together in this, and we need to really continue our efforts and give more weight to science and knowledge to enable all of the different communities around the world. So thank you for your attention.
Please stay with me. So thank you so much, and I'm sure that you all agree with us that we have made a very clever choice for our new honorary doctor. I'm so happy that you will agreed to become our honorary doctor, and we are, of course, very much looking forward to tomorrow. Yes, thank you also for this interesting and informative lecture on the work of IPBES. And a lot of work has been done, and a lot of work is to be done, or should, and I'm not going to stand here and share many of my reflections, but I would just like to point out two things. Your last slide on the interdisciplinary and on the need, because I believe that some of us tend to believe that this is the work of biologists, right? But it is, we are all needed. Economists, social sciences, philosophers, law. Yep. So, and I know that is also very much your achievement, this interdisciplinary, that this has really become an interdisciplinary panel. So that's not a small achievement. And then I would also like to, and this is a little bit from the loss of nature is overwhelming, and it makes us all sad to use that kind of words on it. When I see this kind of work, the work that you are doing, the systematic work, the collaboration across international collaboration, and it is also, it's so much hope to see at least, okay, there is, something is done. You have created this system, and it's something that we can all collaborate in somehow. And I think in our time, hope is something that we should really, really treasure. So also, thank you for that. And I am not going to talk anymore. I'm just going to give you a small token for this lecture. And we're all very much looking forward to tomorrow. Thank you.